Good morning. I am absolutely thrilled to be here with you, and I want to thank you for, again, giving me a few moments to come and to visit with you and kind of catch you up on what we have going on in Congress. And I think there's a little bit about it in the news. Yeah, chuckle. It's quite interesting these days, and I know that it affects you. So before I make a few remarks on policy statements, let me just give you a little bit of an update on what is happening and dominating Congress's time, and of course the hyperventilating mainstream media is truly having a heyday with this as we are in the middle of this government slowdown, and it really has happened because we are not able to get the Senate and the White House to talk with us and to negotiate with us. And as you all probably have heard, the House has sent 4 different continuing resolution proposals over to the Senate and asked them to take up one of them. All of them would protect the American people from harmful impacts that we are seeing take place via the Obamacare or Affordable Care Act vehicle. We've got things that would provide fairness for everybody. We have appointed negotiators to go to the negotiating table on this, and we've been very disappointed that we've not been met at the negotiating table with the Senate. We also have now passed a total of 12 different funding vehicles and to fund different components of government, fund our veterans, disaster assistance, open our parks, NIH research funding for some of the cancer groups. 83% of the federal government is open. We have passed a bill that would have a special committee to go negotiate a resolution to this. The Senate has tabled every single one of those, even though we have had over 200 Democrats in the House vote with us on different ones of these measures. So they are saying, you know, that they're not going to act on any of these bills. They are not interested in negotiating a way forward. They want a clean CR, and you have probably heard that terminology until you're sick of it. In essence, what a clean CR is, they are saying, give us the money, but don't hold us accountable. They want no attachments at all, and that is not something we're going to do. We want an accountable CR that is going to require outcomes and require that we move forward in a way that is respectful of the U.S. taxpayer. We have to remember every single penny the federal government has to spend comes out of your pocket. And you have a right to demand accountability. And now we're finding ourselves at just a little more than a week away from hitting the debt limit. And we again find that we have a White House and a Senate that is not wanting to negotiate with us on this. But we feel that Congress has to acknowledge that the spending, out of control spending, has to be brought under control. At this point in time, we are currently borrowing between $2 and $3 billion per day, every day, to keep the lights on. The Fed is monetizing about $75 billion of debt each month. These are not sustainable long-term practices. And when we did the Budget Control Act in 2011, we said 2% across the board spending cuts, we would do that. That one measure will save our nation $630 billion over a 10-year period of time. And it's why we've been able to ratchet the borrowing, daily borrowing, down from $3 to $4 billion a day down to about $2 to $3 billion a day, is because of that fiscal restraint. So we recognize that we're not going to get everything we want out of this agreement. Nobody will. But for the solvency and the good of the nation and for future generations, it is imperative that this White House and our president do what previous presidents have done and sit at the negotiating table. 53 times we have had debt ceilings that have been negotiated. This is since 73. And out of those, 27 of those negotiations have centered on spending reductions. And we are asking this administration to do what previous presidents and previous administrations have done. And I hope you all will stay in touch with us. My website is blackburn.house.gov. We have Facebook is Marsha Blackburn, and Twitter is @MarshaBlackburn. And I do hope that you'll stay in touch with us as we work through these issues. They're important to you. Getting the FCC labs and different components back up, it's all important. We realize that. We didn't want to shut down and were disappointed when they would not negotiate with us on either the budget or the CR, and now the debt ceiling, and to address this. Okay, on to policy, because there are so many issues that deserve your attention, and you are truly a growth sector. And over the years, as I've spoken to you, and every year we look at where you are, what percentage of the economy you are. You're a sixth of the nation's economy at this point in time. You're right there with healthcare when we talk about the impact on the economy, and I think the stakes are high for everyone in the technology and telecom arena, because your concepts and your innovations are what is revolutionizing every single sector of the U.S. economy. When I'm out in my district and I'm meeting with those that are working in transportation and some of the innovations that are taking there, I have a GM facility, I have Nissan North America located in my district. They're talking about many times technologies and innovations you're bringing to the marketplace. When I am in my hospitals, we are the mecca of hospital and healthcare management. And many times as I am in these companies, whether they're healthcare delivery, pharmaceuticals, practice management, hospital management, the concepts and the delivery, the efficiencies are coming from the work that you're doing. We're seeing the same thing in education, and the list goes on and on. And we truly are living in a time where it is the interactive technologies and internet access that have the potential to change our daily lives for the better. But it requires that we as policymakers listen to you and make wise decisions. One of the biggest challenges will undoubtedly be updating our obsolete telecommunications law framework to make it relevant to today's current marketplace. We've made some improvements in that law over the years. 05 and 06 saw a little bit of tweaking on it. The last substantial overhaul was in 1996. And I think it's fair to say that a lot in your world has changed since 96. New communication services are governed by old rules and outdated assumptions, and this sometimes causes weaker investment, private investment into your sector of the economy. It gives you fewer consumer choices to bring to the marketplace, causes uncertainty, and of course is there underpinning less competition sometimes. And we are aware that there needs to be a substantial overhaul. The law, as it is currently written, segregates various communication services based on the delivery platform rather than focusing on end use, and focusing on that end use by the consumer, which is defined as the digital product or the service that the consumer actually receives. But no one can argue technology hasn't evolved to a point where different communications platforms offer a similar suite of voice video, and data services. Some say it's a bold endeavor to try to overhaul and modernize our laws to rationalize today's competitive marketplace, but we must be proactive if we want to enhance consumer welfare, remove unnecessary regulations, and beat back special government preferences that force us to look backward instead of forward. Further challenging the health of the tech industry is the Federal Communications regulatory addiction and their penchant for picking winners and losers in the free market space. Instead of focusing on deploying more spectrum, which I think this is something that we want them to go do, is get more spectrum into the commercial market to help meet consumers and communities' exploding demand for mobile broadband. The FCC is fixated on growing its jurisdictional footprint and expanding its influence into other areas. Some examples of the FCC's misplacement of its priorities in time, effort, and energies include their so-called net neutrality regulations and Lifeline, or the Obama Phone welfare program, and various taxpayer-funded subsidies that crowd out private investment. In short, we need greater transparency and better process at the FCC, but more importantly, we should insist on greater regulatory restraint at the agency, where new rules should complement market regulation only when true harms and market failures are accurately quantified. On the issue of spectrum, we continue to exercise strong oversight of the incentive auction process, recognizing the exponential growth in demand for mobile broadband. The House Energy and Commerce Committee will also continue to keep the Department of Defense, the Federal Communications Commission, and the Commerce Department moving forward with plans to clear the 1755 to 1850 megahertz band for commercial applications. Another area where the federal government has focused a lot of its attention is the issue of cybersecurity. According to the GAO, over a five-year span, cyber attacks grew by 650% and cost our economy about $400 billion a year. Our citizens' privacy is stripped, business plans are stolen, government sites get hacked. Today's cyber criminals and the states that sponsor them are developing new ways to hit us even harder. They want to tap deeper into our military applications, our trade secrets, our startup technologies, our communication systems, our personal information, and a whole range of data and property that could easily be used to undermine our personal safety and competitiveness in global markets. My legislation, the Strengthening and Enhancing Cybersecurity by Using Research, Education, Information, and Technology Act of 2013. My acronym is the Secure IT Act. It's a non-regulatory solution that is proposed. It would provide our government, business community, and our citizens with the tools, protocols, and the resources that they need to protect themselves from such harm. This incentive-based approach is preferable because the solutions that typically characterize Washington policymaking, more spending, difficult rules, extra bureaucrats, will never be effective in the technology arena. There is no question we must improve our cybersecurity posture across the board, but adding new layers of regulation creates a false sense of security. Instead, we need to put American businesses in the driver's seat and hold the government accountable. In addition to hardening our network security, the ITC industry is also looking for ways to protect technological innovation that is filtering into other growth sectors like healthcare. According to a recent report, There are currently 97,000 health apps in the Apple App Store, and they are generating 3 million free and 300,000 paid downloads every year. 97,000 apps. 15% of these apps are designed specifically for healthcare providers, and today, over 60% of all physicians are using tablets. The interesting thing about that stat is in the past 12 months, the number has doubled. How amazing is that? Estimates indicate that the number of consumers using medical apps on their smartphones and tablets will grow to 500 million worldwide by 2015. A lot of bandwidth there. But today, the FDA lacks the necessary tools to appropriately oversee these innovative products without overstepping their authority and stifling innovation. And there is a solution for this. I am leading a bipartisan group at Energy and Commerce. We are working on legislation that I expect to file later this week or the first of next week, and it will provide the FDA with the tools it needs to effectively protect consumers from the high-risk technologies, the implants that are there, heart monitors, things of that nature, while allowing all the moderate to low-risk technologies, many things that are used in predictive diagnosis, etc., to continue to be innovated upon without being caught in that massive web of expense and time that is the FDA approval process. My legislation will encourage the development of new technologies to improve healthcare delivery, healthcare monitoring, and create new jobs. It is one example of how government needs to think about the future of the network. Technology and connectivity is sweeping into every industry. It is revolutionizing these products and the delivery systems and the capture and diagnosis of that data. Also, Congressman Peter Welch from Vermont and I have been working on the Energy and Commerce Committee's bipartisan privacy and data security working group. We had our first working group session last month. This is just for our committee. We are primarily working it through the Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade Subcommittee. And we are going to hold a series of meetings throughout the rest of the year so that we can better understand how the commercial online marketplace works and what the regulatory footprint should be. How can we enhance consumer trust and security online? How can we foster innovation for advertisers, publishers, marketers? How can we safeguard consumers' virtual presence online? We welcome your input as we continue to move through these working groups, whether it comes to overhauling our antiquated communications laws, reforming the FCC process, unleashing spectrum, bolstering cyber defenses, facilitating the ability of healthcare IT platforms, or addressing consumers' online privacy concerns. We need to have your input, and we want to hear from you. Government and the private sector need to share new ideas if we aspire to continue leading the knowledge economy. Unleashing the entrepreneurial spirit will require us to put markets instead of politics at the center of these crucial debates, and conference like the one you're attending today is putting forth wonderful ideas and forums that will help move to these decisions. So thank you for allowing me to spend a few minutes with you to talk about the future of the network and the current status of play. And I am going to open the floor and take your questions for a couple of minutes, if any of you have questions you'd like to ask before I head back to the Hill. Questions? Got a microphone there. Anybody with a question or two?
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
I'm Susan Schramm with Nokia Siemens Network, is also on the board of TIA. As an industry, we struggle with how to best educate government, recognizing that your business isn't our business. And we represent the entire value chain of communications.
Right.
What do you find is best practice in terms of helping decision makers like yourself on policy? And as we bring our issues forward, what do you all need?
You know, I
help you?
appreciate that so much, and this is actually what became the genesis for doing a working group, drilling down, if you will, on that data security and privacy issue. The technologies and the delivery systems change and are changing rapidly. And policymakers have a difficult time keeping up with the technology because of the rapidity of change. And we found the working group to be very helpful, and it's also why we're continuing to say, let's put the focus on end use and not on the delivery system. And I think a couple of things that I would recommend. Number one, to our Energy and Commerce Committee, as there are new innovations in the pipeline, knowing that we need that knowledge prior to it going to the mass market or the marketplace. As there are innovations and concepts in the pipeline, taking that few minutes to work with not only us but our staffs is vitally important. And the second thing would be your customers, kind of the train the trainer concept, those that are customers of your innovation, whether it is forward-facing or it is facing on the backside, having them educate their customers and consumers. I think that is helpful to us. And I'll give you a great example. Our first working group meeting, we were looking at what kind of data is collected and why. So we brought in a retailer who is outward-facing, Walmart. We had Blue Kai, who is there on the backbone, and Google as a search engine, so that we could hear from each of them and their particular part of the consumer's experience, and then be able to look at that and do a little bit more resource and information for the working group members and our staff, because we're going to need to do something and have some direction on data security and privacy. Yes, sir. Front row, got these questions going. I like this. And by the way, I heard there was a great women's breakfast this morning, women leaders in technology. I like hearing that. Yes, sir.
Good morning, Congresswoman. Thank you for being here. I guess my question is that your point about trust and how critical it is, the PRISM situation has sort of eroded trust even further.
Correct.
And I'm very concerned about the backlash globally, where now people are potentially restricting even U.S. companies, like Huawei being restricted here as backlash. And what can be done from a policy government standpoint, you think, to help build that trust globally, which is critical to capitalize on the true promise of the mobile wave?
Right, and the trust issue is something that is not lost on us, and I think there are a couple of things that can be done which would enable trust within the government sector and the private sector. Number one, certainty through the regulatory process and the expectations of the federal government would be helpful. People used to know what the foreign policy of the U.S. was. They previously would tell you they knew what trade policy. There was certainty in that arena. There was a certain expectation that a protocol would be followed in a given way. And that's pretty much been how they chose to operate. They feel as if there has been greater uncertainty around the government sector and what our foreign policy or what our trade policy would be over the last few years. I think that when you look at the private sector, some of the bumps in the road for our companies that work on a multinational or global basis has been uncertainty of tax policy. One of the things that I hear from some of my Tennessee companies that function around the globe is repatriation of tax dollars would be, being able to repatriate those earnings would be helpful. It would also help us to bring R&D back into this country. And another thing we hear that affects our companies that are working globally is EPA regulation, because the more aggressive and intrusive EPA is, then the more that manufacturing in your industry, component parts, et cetera, it goes to other parts of the world rather than being done here. And I have to tell you, it was noticed by those of us at Energy and Commerce Committee that the EPA deemed 93% of their employees non-essential. So you can look forward to a hearing on why we are hiring and holding on the payroll non-essential employees for agencies that are making it very difficult on our U.S. companies. Companies deserve the certainty and the support of their government. They don't deserve to have uncertainty and lack of support in the global marketplace. Yes, over here. I see a hand up.
Hello. Hi, my name is Gregory Druhack, and I have a question for you that I'm going to try to phrase fairly carefully. There was a recent MIT discussion looking at policy in the future, and rather than ask the questions in terms of privacy, I'm going to ask you, what would be the difference in industry if personal data were considered the ownership of the individual rather than just out in the arena? Would that really affect business?
Yeah, you know, and the term I use as we seek to address this is, I say, who owns the virtual you? That's the question every single consumer should be asking. Who owns the virtual you? And it's one of the reasons we need to have the data security, big data, data mining discussion. It's the reason we need to look at how long people hold and capture and to what extent they data mine, how many eyeballs are looking at data, who has the transfer rights, and then how the privacy settings are going to be manipulated. I have been very straightforward with our search engines and with our online community. Number one, I want to see them take the responsibility for consumer education. Number two, I want to make certain that those privacy agreements are easily understood. Number three, I want consumers to have in their toolbox the ability to set some protections for themselves. I have to tell you, there is probably nothing women hate more than a peeping Tom. And it is something that you see, and we hear from female consumers online. They'll go online, they'll Google a topic, and then they go into their spam filter, and voila, it is full of ads. It is full of emails that are placed there because of keyword searches. And the question, answering the question, who owns the virtual you, I think is going to be the nugget that will help get us to how we look at the interface of the marketplace, online marketplace, the .com, the commercial marketplace, and then you've got to look at how that gets transferred to the .govs and .mils. And you need to go to my website, the blackburn.house.gov website. I've got a chart there that shows how the information for the new Obamacare Health Exchange Network, how that is brought in, and then all the different federal agencies that are going to have eyeballs looking at it, and then how it goes back out of the federal system to Equifax for income verification and back into the federal system. I was speaking to a HIMSS conference, regional HIMSS conference, the Health Information Management Systems conference the other day, and I put the chart up on the PowerPoint, and they were absolutely astounded. Now, the other thing, and this gets into the Facebook IPO and some of those questions, is if an entity captures your info, and if they are watching you and they are making decisions based on your cloud score, and how are they going to incentivize and pay you for the way they are selling or sharing or using your information for financial benefit? And more customers are beginning to ask that question. When I'm doing town halls around this issue of who owns the virtual you and what information you share, I will have individuals take out their keychain, and I'll say, okay, how many keys are on your key ring? And usually people have 2 or 3 keys. That's a trusted relationship. You allow someone to unlock something that is locked away. And I'll say, now, how many of these plastic fobs are on your keychain where you have affinity programs for different retailers? That is someone you have elected to enter into that relationship with them and allow them to scan your keychain every time you go to CVS or Kroger or the Hallmark store or Home Depot or wherever. And then you expect that for letting them track what you're buying, that you're going to get cents off, dollars off, percent off, coupons or invitations to special events, or a priority treatment. And so I think that that concept of who owns that virtual you and what is privacy and what is not, what is shared, will be one of our big debates in the years coming. Okay, that's showing that the time clock is out, so I'll take one more question if anybody's got one. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sure.
John Weiler, IT Acquisition Advisory Council. A simple question. Chairman Issa has championed an effort to improve the government's ability to acquire innovation. As the federal government's the world's largest consumer of network capabilities, what are your thoughts on removing the barriers to innovation? Because we are now seeing major players in the market, innovators, getting out of the government sector because of the cost, the burden, the ineffectiveness.
One of the things we want to do are to remove burdens that the federal government puts in place for our innovators. The other thing I will say is we want to hold that innovation here on U.S. soil. We don't want that to leave. I think the other thing that some of us that are focused on the virtual space and we look at innovation, we also look at, and I think this is what you're referencing with ISA, we've got 3.5 million Americans who do contracting, small businesses that do contracting with the federal government. And what we want for our contractors in the virtual space is a level playing field. Federal government doesn't need to go block people out of the process and try to do everything in-house. There are some things that are better outsourced, and technology innovation is certainly one of those. You all are doing a great job. You are very kind to be here and to give me a few moments of your time. I hope that you will stay in touch, and I look forward to coming back and sharing some more time with you another year. Thank you so much.